All right, so today is the day, like I said a moment ago, is the day that we fall back. A lot of people sometimes look forward to this because after having sprung forward, the hour was moved up or has been moved up to increase our usage of work. This idea and the concept of springing forward, that's something that was really significant for agrarian society and agrarian industries because it did give them more hours to work the fields and all of those things that were incumbent upon that industry. So it benefited them. It also benefited daylight savings time during war. So military were able to extend or expend their resources in times of war. But today is the day that we fall back. Since 1974, most of us as North Americans, we've looked forward to the idea of falling back, which means that we get to return to a standard time. Returning to standard time means that, of course, for some of us, we gain an extra hour of sleep. I don't know about you, but did anybody appreciate getting an extra hour of sleep today? All right, I got some hands up. I got some, yeah, okay, all right, yeah. Some of us, you didn't raise your hand because it didn't make a difference. I can identify with you. I fall in that boat. I was still up hours before sunrise, engaging in work. But the big deal about daylight savings time is this, and I think it's just in our minds, is that it creates this idea of being a little more comfortable. Daylight savings time, falling back gives this idea of being a little more comfortable. You not only get to sleep longer, but with daylight savings time and even the time of year that it comes, it's a marker of different things. It's a marker to prepare for the big holiday season coming up. Are we ready for the holidays? Everybody, yes, that's right. Nod, yes, we're all ready for that. We have Thanksgiving coming up. We have the Christmas holidays coming up. That means we look forward to a little more travel, whether we are going out or sometimes we have family and our friends coming in. It is a marker for this particular season. It is a marker for celebration, and it is a marker for different comforts that we like to engage in that perhaps we don't necessarily do towards the other seasons and quarters of the year. But this is what I understand, is that sometimes familiarity with comforts can bring the best experiences. And sometimes the familiarity with comforts can bring some of the worst experiences. And this is what happens when we fall back spiritually. If you haven't guessed by now, the title for today's message is Fall Back. Fall Back, that is the title for what we're going to explore today. So what happens when we fall back spiritually? Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever experienced falling back? Have you ever seen anybody or witnessed anybody who may have fallen back spiritually? This is what I understand, is that when you have fallen, you can get so comfortable that you can do some of the most regrettable and despicable things when you've fallen. When you've fallen, if it's not comfort, sometimes the indication of having fallen back is that you do something, that you are so fearful about something that you do something unconscionable. When we fall. And let's take a look at one of Jesus' disciples, Simon Peter. This is personally one of my favorite characters through the Bible. If I had a list of 10, I think that Peter would be in the top 3 for sure. So in John chapter 21, we start at verse 2. It goes like this: Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples, they were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. I'm going to take a pause right here, these first couple of verses. Simon Peter decides that he wants to go out and fish. Well, I want to ask a simple question. What's wrong with fishing? Anything wrong with fishing? There's nothing wrong with fishing. We have some great fishermen out here. We have great fishermen among us. I look at the Facebook post. I see what y'all catch. I also like to eat fish. So there's nothing wrong with fishing. But what we're able to capture in this particular passage is the state of mind and the state of being that Peter is in when he says, I'm going out to fish. Well, what kind of state and what kind of mind is Peter in? Well, Peter is troubled. Simon Peter is in a troubled space. Why is he in a troubled space? Because it hasn't been a full week since the cross. It hasn't been a full week since the crucifixion. Highly likely. And he's being troubled by all of the events that surrounded that. Well, what were some of the things that surrounded that? Well, there are many things, but what were the things in particular that Peter could be concerned with? Well, for starters, Peter promised to never leave Jesus. He promised to never leave Jesus. I remember when Jesus, and what I'm about to explain to you is not necessarily captured in this one particular gospel of John, but when you collectively look at all of the gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these are all of the things that you can find out. So he promises to never leave, Peter does. And then after they have their meal together, Jesus goes, he says, hey, look, I remember before when I first called you guys, I told you, don't bring a cloak, don't bring your sandals, don't do any of that, don't bring your swords, but you need to do it. Get your cloaks, get your sandals, and go and get a sword. And then Peter pulls out 2 swords. He goes, hey, I got 2 right here. Then Jesus said, that's enough, Peter. Peter's doing the most. I identify with Peter a little bit. Peter remembered that he fell asleep on Jesus. Jesus said, hey, Peter, come with me. Keep watch while I go over here and pray. Peter fell asleep during the time that Jesus needed him the most. After the prayer, the mob comes to grab Jesus, and one of the swords that Peter has, he cuts off the soldier's ear. But this is what I think. Peter wasn't sad about cutting off the soldier's ear. I think Peter had an attitude because Peter's trying to protect Jesus, he cuts off the soldier's ear, and then Jesus picks up the ear and puts it back on the guy and rebukes Peter. Peter's like, I'm looking out for you. I'm trying to protect you. And you're making me look like an idiot. I think he could have had an attitude about that. But he cuts off the ear. And then, afterwards, as he's kind of following Jesus at a distance, he denies knowing Jesus. And it's not just a denial. I want you to understand. Like, these are lies. Hey, weren't you with Jesus? Nope. Yes, you were. I hear your accent. No, it's not me. You got to be one of Jesus. And it got so bad that Peter started cussing. I'm not going to say cursing. He cussed. He was cussing people out. He was cussing himself. I don't know the man. He went to that length and that extreme to make sure that he knew, or that the people knew, that he was not associated with Jesus. I don't know about you, but have you ever been in a situation where somebody may have identified you with someone else, or perhaps someone may have identified you or associated you with something holy and or something righteous, and because of sometimes just being ashamed or being a coward spiritually, you start acting in ways unbecoming and disassociating yourself with the very righteousness that protected you. with the very righteousness that has rescued you. I don't know if you can identify with that, but I've been there. I've been there before in my life. And I know when I was in that place, I felt horrible. I felt like, God, what in the world am I doing? Who am I? These people know that I'm supposed to be representing you, and look at how I'm acting. I don't need to say anything else. You know what? I'm just going to go on and do the stuff that I used to do before. Falling back. Heart and mind is trouble. Now, all of these things, Peter's attempting to numb himself from these events. And he'd gotten so comfortable with Jesus that he started to relax on his assignment and purpose. Did you hear me? Peter got so comfortable with Jesus that he started to relax on his assignment and on his purpose. He had gotten too familiar with the Lord. All of the private prayer times, all of the meals, all of the things that Jesus sent him out to go and set up, he got too familiar with Jesus. All of the private miracles, all of the wine making, all of the parties, all of the good stuff, dancing, all in the videos. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That he took the Lord for granted. And Peter chose to numb himself by doing something that he used to do all the time. He chose to numb himself by doing something that he identified with and something that all other people identified him with before he met the Lord. He chose to numb himself with all of the things before he met Jesus and before there was purpose in his life. And I'm just being honest. It seems real easy to look at Peter and to be like all of those shaking head emojis and gifts that we do and go, that Peter. But what about you today? Of course, disciples, I am talking about you. Going back, doing the things that you used to do before Jesus. Going back and doing the things that you used to do before you knew about what a purpose was. Going back to the places that you know you shouldn't be going to before you had purpose. Engaging with people that you know you shouldn't be talking to before you had purpose. Falling back. Going back to habits before you had purpose. Going back to the language you used to have before you had purpose in your life. What about that mouth? Going back to the language. And so here's what I think about. It's kind of like Jesus says, whoever is innocent, you can cast the first stone. I have no stones to throw here. Jesus says, if you want to follow me, deny yourself and take up your cross daily. It's a daily thing. It is a daily walk. But this is what I understand is that sometimes we'll give up on our daily walk. I did a sermon a long time ago that said, nope, not today. But sometimes we'll go, you know what? Not today with this daily walk. I can't do it today. I'm not doing it today, Lord. They done made me mad. I'm not doing it. I can't deny myself today. The language. Man, some of us talk like we used to talk when we were back in high school or we were on that middle school bus. Stuff that we wouldn't dare tell our parents we would get home. You can look at me funny if you want to, but you know I'm telling the truth. I don't care how you. This is the Lord talking. It ain't me. I already told you I have no stones to throw. I'm just being honest and being real. Do you want fluffy church or you want real church? You want fluff talk or you want real talk? The way we talk about people, language. We can spread rumors on folks, language. That's the stuff that we used to do before we had purpose. Somebody tell a lie, you go and keep that lie going on like a wheelbarrow. I heard an old school rap song the other day. It was a Houdini. It was a song called Big Mouth. Said you had to tell Sharon. She told Carol. And the story rolled on just like a wheelbarrow. Carol told Dee Dee and she told Pam. And Pebbles overheard it talking to her man. Pebbles told Cookie what she thought she heard. And I easily got to worry. He told somebody I knew from uptown. And then they called me up. And they put me down. But that's what language does. And I know that you might not know this, but sometimes language like this happens in the church. What? Are you serious? That's what happens when we fall back. Here's the other thing. Here's what's interesting. When you look at this passage, Peter says, I'm going out to fish. And then what happened? The other said, well, we're going with you. You ever think about sometimes when you fall back, you can be in a company of people. They're not going to pull you out of it. They're going to join along. They're going to join in along with you. You falling, I'm falling too. Oh, we all fall together. But to me, that sounds a little bit like, that's what you do when you're young, when you're little kids. This person don't like you, so I don't like you either. Yeah, you had no reason not to disassociate yourself, but because this friend disassociated themselves, well, I guess I'm going to do that too. But amazingly, we find grown folks that do the same thing. When we fall back, sometimes we drag others with us. It's not just our sin alone. We got to understand our sin never just rests and abides with us on our lonesome. We can sometimes drag other people in with it. I tell you, I was talking to my disciples, brothers and sisters who have been, but you know what? I know that somebody in here is trying to follow God. You're still weighing out. What should I do? What is God calling me to? I'm doing some Bible studies right now, and I'm learning a little bit about myself, but I ain't really trying to open myself up like that. Well, you know what? Here's what I want to tell you. Trust God through it all. Here's what I want to share with you, is that just as Jesus had an expectation for his disciples, he has an expectation for the entire world. He has an expectation for all of humanity. The notion, though, is that all of humanity will not respond. Do you want to be like the greater part of humanity, or do you want to be what you know and what you hear God is calling you to do? And here's another thing I want to share with you, is that, God will use people in your life to teach you these things. But know that the people who are leading you to the Lord, people who are leading you to the waters of baptism, they are not perfect. So never expect perfection from the people who are showing you the Lord. In fact, while they are showing you the Lord, it is also now incumbent upon you to share with them and to remind them about what is good, what is true, what is righteous, what is lovely, what is peaceful, what is life-giving. It is also your call. And understand that those who are showing you and leading you to God, they're saints. But a saint is just a sinner who fell down and got up. A Same as just a sinner who fell down and got up again. And they fell down and they got up again. So what are you going out to do? It says that, when they did this, they were like, okay, we're going with you too, Peter. It says that night they got in the boat. They got in the boat. What are you doing at night? What are you doing at night? What are you planning to go out that you think nobody can see you doing? Or you might be thinking to yourself, I know some of y'all are real smarty pantses. I don't go out. Well, what you doing that night in your house? What you doing that night in your bedroom? What you doing that night in front of your computer screen? What you doing that night while your doors are closed? What you doing that night on your phone? What are you doing that night with some of the paraphernalia that you have hidden and tucked away? What are you doing at night? What are you doing on that streaming service? What are you doing on that subscription that you ain't supposed to be having? Get rid of it. It says when they went out at night, check this out. They went out at night. Scripture says they did it all night. You ever find yourself doing something all night? It said they did it all night and they caught nothing. The bounty that they expected to get, they caught nothing. Sometimes we'll go out and we'll be doing something like, man, I'm about to go back and do this old thing that I used to do. And you know what? You end up finding out, I had no business being out here. Nothing good happened while I was out here. But there's hope. Check this out. Look at verse 4 in your Bible. After they went out at night. Because when you go out, you ain't going to catch nothing, and you definitely ain't going to catch nothing good. But what does it say in verse 1? First phrase, early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore. Early in the morning. Check this out. You have to understand that everything is intentional with God. Everything is intentional with the Lord. At night, they went out and they set out to do something. At night, they set out to do something in darkness. But then in the morning, who appeared? Jesus appeared. As the day is coming up, the Lord appears. And he stood on the shore. But the disciples didn't recognize that it was Jesus. Check this out. I love this right here, verse 5. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? Friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. Obviously, they were throwing it on the wrong side of the boat. Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. And when they did, they were unable to haul in the nets because of the large number of fish. Then the disciples whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him. He had taken it off and he jumped into the water. The other disciples followed him in the boat. Man, Peter swimming like Aquaman. I'm just saying he's going faster than the boat. Towing the net full of fish, they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. And when they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. And Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you just caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and he dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. And then none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. The next idea I want to talk about is, the title of the message is Fall Back. I want to talk about an idea of falling forward. Y'all ready for this? Falling forward. Now, falling forward is really my personal remix to John C. Maxwell's book, Failing Forward. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, It's called Failing Forward. And really, the idea of the book is it's a leadership book, it's a leadership concept that basically says, accept your failures as a stepping stone for future success. And to fail forward means that you have chosen to respect each failure for the lessons it teaches you and to apply those lessons to future efforts. So my remix is a lot shorter than that. My remix just simply says, accept fallbacks. Accept your spiritual fallbacks into future righteousness and to future blessings. You know, because when you falling back, if you remain falling back and you just stay captivated in that mindset, you'll go nowhere. And that's not the idea of life that God has. Again, one of my favorites, Jesus says, I came to give you life and give it to the full. Man, I love that idea. A full life means that everything's going to come with it. It's not just going to be blue skies and rainbows all of the time. But I'm going to have a full life. And then Jesus also gave the promise, I believe it's in Luke chapter 9. He says, hey, you know what? Nobody who's left me will not fail to receive 30 times, 60, or 100 times as much brothers and sisters, family in the Lord, and blessings on this earth and in the kingdom of heaven. That sounds like a full life to me. All I simply want to say is fall forward. Don't allow what has happened in the past, even if it was this morning. You as a disciple, a brother and or sister in the Lord, you messed up really bad. You messed up really bad last week. You messed up really bad 2 weeks ago. You messed up bad really 6 months ago. You messed up bad. There are apologies that you've done and you know it wasn't right. You need to say it over again because it didn't come from the right heart. There are apologies that you need to have and you never said it. You never even expressed it. Don't allow the moment to pass you by. Do it and get it right. Because you can fall forward. We can take the things that we've fallen back, where we've messed up, where our mouths have messed up, where our actions have messed up, and we can move forward. The idea is simple. Let Jesus get you right. Said they cast their nets on the right side of the boat sometimes. We'll cast our proverbial nets of life on the wrong side. We'll cast our stuff on the wrong side of life. We'll cast our stuff on ideas that it may not necessarily be sin. It may not necessarily be something wrong. But whatever it is that you're doing is not in line with his will because it's not fruitful. It's not bringing any return. There's no spiritual return. Jesus' design is that when you cast out a net, because Jesus wasn't involved before, but he stood at a distance. He stood in the background. Have you gotten any fish? Throw your net on the right side of the boat. Have you gotten a deliverance? Pray about this. Have you got any healing? Go and see that person. You've talked to this person, but that ain't the person you need to see. Go here. Jesus stands at a distance and he gives you directions. But ultimately, when Jesus gets involved, there are favorable results. And Here's what I want to highlight for you right here. And I don't know if you've caught this, but I want you to understand. It was Peter that started this whole thing. I'm going out to fish. Going back to doing something he wasn't supposed to do, or he was doing something that he identified himself with before Jesus and before purpose. Jesus comes up on the scene. And when he calls out to them, the first word that he uses, friends. Can you imagine that? To the person who's promised to be there with you, and they deserted you, and he does what? He didn't say, hey, deserter, I'm glad you didn't catch any fish. That's what you get for leaving me. Matter of fact, I'm going to get my boat. And you know what I mean? But he calls out and goes, friends. Friends. To the person who lied on him, called him a friend. The person that denied him, called him a friend. The person that he saw in an act of violence, he called him a friend. Because it wasn't the end. The fallback wasn't the end of the story. The fallback wasn't the end of purpose. The fallback was not the end of life. That was just a segment that you get to renew all over again. Isn't it encouraging to know that even when you have fallen back, that Jesus will come up in the middle of your doggone struggle and he will call you a friend? I don't know if that gets you excited, but that gets me doggone excited. Because I've done a whole lot of stuff in my life and I continue to mess up. But every morning that I wake up, I know that Jesus is ready to call me friend. That in the middle of your struggle, he will call you a friend. Ultimately, Jesus makes it known that when we fall back, sure, you can fall back, but you can also fall back on him. Can we fall back on Jesus this morning? After you've lied, you can fall back on Jesus. After you've cussed somebody out, you can fall back on Jesus. After you've cheated, you can fall back on Jesus. After you've deserted him, you can fall back on Jesus. After you've used your mouth in such a way that you shouldn't have used it, you can fall back on Jesus. When you've been casting your nets all in the wrong places, you can hear his voice at a distance, and you can fall back on Jesus. The Lord can get you right and get you on the right side of the boat. At this time, I don't know if you have communion. I was supposed to ask y'all to do that a little bit earlier. But I really appreciate Jesus. If you need communion, raise your hand. You can get that now. But it is an amazing thing that Jesus will stand out on the shore. He will call you friend. Here's the thing I understand about God. God knows and sees everything, so he sees us making mistakes, and he watches us make mistakes. But he still shows up in the morning, ready to lift us up, ready to call us friend. Makes me think about this particular idea right here. When you fall back, don't fall back into your sin. Don't fall back into the life that he so desperately and so passionately made available to you by his grace, because he continues to save you. He continues to rescue you. But to know this, that you can fall forward, understanding that mistakes are also opportunities. And what are those mistakes for? Not just opportunities, but for opportunities for bigger triumphs and bigger blessings that will not only refresh your soul, but that will refresh the hearts of the saints, that will refresh the hearts of your community, refresh the hearts of your family, the hearts of your coworkers, the hearts of your classmates, the heart will refresh the hearts of even strangers when you fall back on the Lord. And this is what he shared with his disciples at that amazing meal that we still celebrate today, that we call communion, where he took bread and he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples and said, "This is my body given for you. Whenever you eat this, do this in remembrance of me." Let's eat the bread that represents the body of the Lord given for us. And in the same way, after that meal, he took a cup of wine and he said, "This represents my blood poured out for you. Whenever you drink this, do it in remembrance of me." Let's drink what represents the blood of Christ poured out for us. I'm going to allow about 30 seconds of a bit of silence, and I'm going to pray.